These are practice problems to lesson 11, solutions to linear equations. And in problem number 1, you're given an equation, 2x plus 3y equals 6, and you're asked which of these points are solutions to this equation. And so I'm going to go through, I'm going to make this table, and I'm going to list the x-coordinate for each of these. Now these are called coordinate pairs, and they identify a point on a coordinate grid, a graph. And the x-coordinate is the first coordinate that's listed, and the y-coordinate is the second coordinate that's listed. So in this first one, x is 0, y is 2. And so I'm going to double 0, so 2 times 0, because that's what it says to do right here, 2 times 0. 2 times 0 is 0, and I'm going to triple y. And that's what it says right here, 3 times y. So 3 times 2 is 6. And I'm going to add these two values together, 2x plus 3y, and that equals 6. So this is a solution to this equation. Now this equation, when graphed, it will form a straight line. And what this means is that this is a point on that line. It is a solution to the equation. It's a point on the line, because when you double x and you triple y, add them together, you get an answer of 6. That's not true for b. So when x is 0 and b and y is 6, so 2 times 0 is 0, 3 times 6 is 18, add them together, you get an answer of 18. So again, I'm doubling x and I'm tripling y, adding them together, get an answer of 18, which is not 6. So this is not a point on the line that is a graph of this equation. And then the rest of them, if you look at 2, 3, so you're going to get 2 times x is 4, 3 times y is 9, add them together, you get 13. D doesn't work, but E and F both do work. So 2 times 3 is 6, 3 times 0 is 0, so that adds to 6. 2 times 6 is 12, 3 times negative 2 is negative 6, 12 plus negative 6 equals positive 6, so that one works. So there are 3 points from this table, 3 points from over here, that will be on a line that is the graph of this equation. So let's look at that. So on this coordinate grid, on this graph, I plotted each of those points, and 3 of these are going to be on a straight line, so A, E, and F, that are solutions to this equation. Now there could be other points that form straight lines that are not solutions to this equation. They're solutions to some other equation. But in this case, A, E, and F are all right here. So this line, every point on this line is a solution to this equation. So if you take the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate to any point on this line, if you double the x-coordinate and you triple the y-coordinate, add them together, they will equal 6. For example, let's take this point right here. So this point is at 1.5. The x-coordinate is 1.5. The y-coordinate is 1. Well, what's 2 times 1.5? That is 3. What's 3 times 1? That is 3. So 3 plus 3 equals 6. So this point right here satisfies this equation. Take one more. Let's take an easy one down here. And what I'm looking for is where this line crosses the intersection of the grid, so that I can easily tell what that point is. And this point is a positive 4.5. So what's 2 times 4.5? That's equal to 9. And it's a negative 1. So what's 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. 9 plus negative 3 equals 6. So again, that point is on the graph of this line, which is the graph of this equation, which is this line right here. So every point on it will be solutions to this equation. This is problem number 2, and you're given a graph of a situation where Priya is going into a store and buying comic books. And Priya has so much money that she can spend, and she can buy so many comic books. And so it says, find and interpret the x and y intercepts of this line. So where does this line cross the y-axis, and where does this line cross the x-axis, and what do those two values mean? So the x-intercept is at 5, 0. So you go out to this point right here, that's 5, and the y coordinate is 0. So this x-intercept is at 5, 0. That means that she has purchased 5 comic books. And how much money does she have? Well, she doesn't have any more money because she has spent all of her $20. So that's now $0 and 5 comic books. The y-intercept is at 0, 20. So before she purchases any comic books at all, she has $20. So 0 comic books, $20. Now notice that this is a negative slope. Every time she purchases a comic book, this line goes down as she removes money from the amount of money that she starts with. So it's a negative slope. Well, how much is she spending on each comic book? So it says find and interpret the slope of this line. That is the slope, the amount of money that she spends per comic book. That's the unit rate or the slope. So she buys 1 comic book. How much money has she spent? Well, to figure that out, you're going to take the amount of change along the y-axis, which is 20 units. So this is going to be a negative 20, and divide that by the amount of change along the x-axis. Well, this is 5 units. So the slope is $20 per 5 comic books, but it's a negative $20 because she's spending money, so it's going away. So it's a negative 20 divided by 5 equals negative 4. So Priya spends $4 per comic book. So she purchases a comic book, she spends $4. Purchases a comic book, spends $4. Purchases a comic book, spends $4. So the change in the amount of money along the y-axis is negative 4 for every 1 comic book that she purchases. So the slope is negative 20 divided by 5, which is the same as negative 4 divided by 1, or negative $4 per comic book, which is negative 4 divided by 1. So Priya spends $4 per comic book, and then they ask you to write the equation. Well, you know, if you write the equation in this form, y equals mx plus b, you know that m is the slope, and you know that's negative 4. You know that b is where it crosses the y-axis, the y-intercept, you know that's 20. So the equation is going to be 4 equals a negative 4x plus 20, because she spends $4 for each comic book, but she started with $20. So you have to add the amount of money that she starts with, so that you have to add the amount of money she starts with. You have to add that $20 because that's what she starts with. And then she's going to take money away from that $20 for each comic book she purchases. So if she buys 3 comic books, for example, she's going to spend $12 because negative 4 times 3 is 12, but that's a negative 12. And then she has to add that to the $20 that she starts with. Well, 20 plus negative 12 means that she's left with $8. So she buys 3 comic books. How much money does she have remaining? That's the that's the $8 right there. She removes $12 and is left with $8. Now, another way to write this equation is to go back with what we did long ago, and that is to use this slope triangle right here. So this is y minus 20. To move this point to the origin, and subtract 20. So that's y minus 20. So this moves down to here, but the x coordinate you don't have to subtract anything or add anything because it's already at the origin. So it's y minus 20 over x equals negative 4. This is the slope. This is another way of writing the slope. Y minus 20 divided by this x. So y minus 20 equals negative 4x. And so y, if I subtracted that 20, I have to add that 20 back because that's the amount of money she starts with. So y equals a negative 4x plus 20. So you get the same equation, just another way to write the same thing. This is problem number 3. It says match each equation with its 3 solutions. So take an equation. So the equations are on the left here. So y equals 1.5x. And what that means is whatever the x coordinate is, you multiply that by 1.5. So 1 1.5 times a value means you're going to take that value and add 1/2 to it. So it's 1 times x plus 1/2 of x. So which of these points over here satisfy this equation, or solutions to this equation? So you just start. You have to pick some points and just test them and see if they work. So if you just start with this one right here, 1.5 times x, so x is 14. What's 1.5 times 14? Well, it's 14 plus 1/2 of 14. Half of 14 is 7. 14 plus 7 is 21. So it looks like this one right away works. Half of 2 is 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. Half of 8 is 4. 8 plus 4 is 12. So these, all 3 points, are solutions to this equation. And by that, what that means is that you take the x-coordinate and you and the y-coordinate, that these are each points on the lines that are defined by these equations. So this is an equation for a line. So you graph this equation, you get a straight line. These are 3 points that are on that line. So this is a solution. These 3 points are solutions to this equation. So the next one, 2x plus 3y equals 7. So you're going to take the x-coordinate, double it, and then you're going to take the y-coordinate, triple that value, and add them together. You should get an answer of 7. So which ones down here match that? And it's number 4. So if you double 1, 2 times 1 is 2, plus 3 times, 2 plus what equals 7? 2 plus 5. So that means that 3y has to equal 5. And is that true? So the y coordinate is 1 2/3. Well, 1 2/3 is the same as 5/3. 1 is 3/3, 4 5/3. What's 5/3 times 3? It is 5. So this is going to give you an answer of 2 plus 5 equals 7. A -1, 2 times -1 is -2. 3 times 3 is 9. So all I'm doing is looking over here, replacing the y-coordinate with 3. 3 times 3 is 9. 2 times a -1 is -2. What's 9 plus -2, which is the same as 9 minus 2? That equals 7. 2 times 0 is 0. And that means that 3 times 2 1/3 has to equal 7. Well, 3 times 2 is 6, and 3 times 1/3 is 1. 6 plus 1 does equal 7. So number 4 works. C. That one is, the answers are number 2 here. So if I take x and I subtract y, I should get an answer of 4. Well, -3 minus -7, so that's adding a +7. So you're going to use the inverse operation and the additive inverse. So -3 plus 7, 7 minus 3 is 4. 0 minus -4 is the same as 0 plus 4. So I like these because you're just quickly basically going through the calculations in your head, and you're remembering some of these rules or some of these things that you have to follow in order to get the answers. So -1 minus -5, so the inverse operation is addition. The additive inverse is +1, so -1 plus 5 is the same as 5 minus 1. That equals 4. This one, the opposite of x plus 1. So take the value of x, what is this opposite, and add 1 to it. So the value of x is 1/2. What's the opposite of 1/2? -1/2. Add 1 plus -1/2. Same as 1 minus 1/2, which is 1/2. This is 1/4, -1/4. 1 minus 1/4 is 3/4, or 1 plus a -1/4 is 3/4. 1 plus a -1/8 is the same as 1 minus 1/8 is 7/8. So this makes sense. And the last one, I would just look at this 2 separate parts. Take y, divide it by 2, and take x and multiply it by 3, see if you get the same thing. So y is 3. What's 3 divided by 2 is 3/2. And x is 1/2, or 5/10. What's 3 times 1/2? Well, 3/2. So you get 3/2 equals 3/2. What's 6 divided by 2? Well, that's 3. What's 3 times 1? That's 3. So 3 equals 3. What's 7 2/10 divided by 2? Well, 7 divided by 2 is 3 5/10. So 7 2/10 divided by 2 is going to be 3 6/10. And what's 3 times 12 is 36, or 3 times 1 2/10 is 3 6/10. So you get 3 6/10 equals 3 6/10. All right, so now, if we graph these 3 points, they will be on a line that is the graph of this equation. If we graph these 3 points, they will fall on a line that is the graph of this equation. So likewise, all the way down, graph these 3 points. They will fall on a line, they will be on a line that is the graph of this equation. That's one way to graph equations. It's just identify points on the line, and then connect them. So I just listed what these answers are because I'm going to use that here. So here are the 5 graphs. So which graph matches which equation? You just have to go through and look at the points and match them up. So this is A, and then B, C, D, and E. So now, match their equations. Just write their equations down. So what I'm going to do now is take an extra point and show you that any point on this line is going to be a solution to this equation. So if I go to x equals 5, so what is y going to equal to? So I just went out here to 5, went up here, and I said, okay, x equals 5, what's y equal to? So I just plug in for x, 5, multiply it by 1.5. So 5 times 1.5 is 5 plus a half of 5, which is 2.5, and you get an answer of 7.5. Does that make sense? This point is at 5, 7.5, or 7.5. So for D up here, I just went up. So I'm just extending this line up, and I'm just picking a point. So I know that y equals 9 right here. So I'm going to plug that into this equation. 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. And what's 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. And 3 times what number equals 4.5? Well, 3 times 1.5 equals 4.5. Well, does that make sense? So you go up here to 9, and you go over to 1/2, and that makes sense. This point right here is 1.5, 9. So go over 1.5 and up 9, you get to that point. This point right here. This line right here is -2. So I know that this line crosses -2. So for x equals -2, what's y going to be equal to? Well, 2 times -2 is -4, and 7 plus 4. So you have to add 4 to solve this, or move that -4 over here. On the other side, you add 4, so 7 plus 4 is 11. So now you have 3y equals 11. Well, what does y equal? Well, if 3 of them equals 11, one of them is equal to 11 divided by 3. So y is equal to 11/3. It's a little bit tough, but does that make sense? So it's -2, and it's a positive 11/3. Is that right? Well, 1 is 3/3. 2 is 6/3, 3 is 9/3, 10/3, 11/3. So I like these because, again, you're practicing doing some relatively simple calculations in your head, just remembering how to do these things. So this line crosses -1 here. So if y is -1, what is x? Or it crosses a +2. That's a little bit easier to work with. If x is +2, what's y? Well, +2, what's the opposite of +2? Is a -2. -2 plus 1 is -1. So that makes sense. This is 2, -1. And the last one over here, this is -2, and this is -6. So -5, 6. I think it's a little bit easier to work with the -6. So if I use y as -6, x minus -6 is the same as x plus +6. So then you have to subtract that 6. So 4 minus 6 is -2. So x is going to equal -2. And does that work? It does. So it's -2, -6. All I'm doing is just picking another point on the line. I could have picked this point right here. I could have picked this point right here. I could have picked this point right here. I know that y is 15, 16, 17. I know that y is 17. So y is equal to 17. A little bit harder. You divide 17 by 1.5. That's going to give you the value of x. That's going to tell you how far you go over. So I'm just picking a point on the lines and checking them to see if they do in fact are solutions to the equation. So the x and y values make sense in that equation. A little bit tough. Just another way. This is problem number 4. And in this problem, you have a container of fuel that is dispensing fuel at a rate of 5 gallons per second. Dispensing means that it's giving out. Fuel is leaving the tank. It's flowing out of the tank. So it's dispensing fuel at a rate of 5 gallons per second. Now think about this rate for just a moment. 5 gallons per second. So a second, 1001. Another second, 1001, 1002, 1003. So every second, 5 gallons is leaving this tank. So picture 5 gallons of water or 5 gallons of milk. So 5 of those gallon jugs lined up, and those get dumped out in 1 second, 1001. 5 gallons, 1002. Another 5 gallons, 1003. Another 5 gallons. So this is a very fast rate. It's leaving very quickly. So that means that this tank has to have a whole bunch of fuel in it for this problem to make any kind of sense. So if y represents the amount of fuel remaining in the container, so this is similar to other problems we've looked at. The comic book problem, $20, y was how many dollars were remaining after purchasing comic books. So the amount of fuel remaining in the container is going down over time. So the number of seconds that have passed since the fuel started dispensing, and x and y satisfy a linear relationship, so it's on a line. So you just have to say whether that slope is positive, negative, or 0. Well, since fuel is leaving the tank, that slope is negative. It's a -5 gallons per second. So the slope is negative. So for every second, 5 gallons is leaving the tank. So let's add a little bit more to this to just get an idea of what's going on. Let's say that that tank holds 5,000 gallons. Now that's not written up here anywhere. I'm just making this up. I know it has to have a lot. I'm going to use a multiple of 5 because I know that it's a slope of 5 gallons per second. So that's going to make my calculation a little bit easier if I think about 5 times some number. So 5,000 gallons in the tank at the start. So y, the amount of fuel that remains, is that -5 gallons per second. So it's 5 gallons are leaving every second times the number of seconds. So over time, it's 5 gallons per second that's leaving. So you have to multiply it by the number of seconds that you've allowed that fuel to leave the tank. Remember, you have to add the 5,000 gallons on to the end because that's the amount of fuel that started. Then you're going to take this amount, you're going to subtract that, or that's going to be taken away from what you started with to get how much fuel remains, because y is the remaining fuel. All right, so let's put a number in here for seconds. So let's say that x equals 100 seconds. What happens in about 1 minute and 40 seconds? A little bit over 1.5 minutes. Well, it's a -5 gallons per second times 100. That's going to be 500 gallons are going to leave the tank. So this is a -500, but you started with 5,000 gallons. So how much fuel is going to be left in the tank? That's going to be 4,500 gallons are going to remain in that tank. So now you can write the equation. Now it doesn't ask you to do any of this stuff. It's going through a bunch of stuff that we've been doing and how this fits together. So the slope is a -5 gallons per second. X is the number of seconds. And remember, you have to add the 5,000 to this because that's what you start with. So you get this equation, y equals a -5x plus 5,000, which is the same thing we wrote up here. Y equals a -5x plus 5,000. So now if we graph this, the y-intercept is going to be at 5,000 gallons, and the slope is a negative 5 gallons per second. So if we draw a negative slope, so where does it cross the x-axis? So how many seconds does it take to empty the tank entirely? Well, this has to equal a negative 5 times some number has to equal negative 5,000, because it's a negative 5,000 plus a positive 5,000. So y then will equal 0. So fuel is going away, 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 till the amount of fuel left is 0. How many seconds does it take to get to y equals 0? Well, that's going to take 1,000 seconds. So negative 5 times 1,000 is a negative 5,000, plus a positive 5,000 is going to equal 0. So 1,000 seconds is a little bit more than 16 minutes, a little bit more than 1/4 of an hour, or 15 minutes. Actually, it's 16 2/3 minutes. You take the 1,000 seconds divided by 60, because it's 60 seconds per minute. That's going to tell you how many minutes it takes. And the y-intercept is going to be way up here. So at 0 time, it's going to be way up here at 5,000. So it's going to be very far up the y-axis. And notice, just in the way I drew it here, gives the idea that it's a very steep slope that's flowing out at a very fast rate. Because remember, that was 5 gallons that were flowing out every single second. So that's very fast. Okay, this is problem number 5. So you have you're buying sandwiches at a sandwich store, and there is a delivery fee, and they want you to figure out how much does each sandwich cost, and what's the delivery fee. And they tell you that 4 sandwiches cost $33. That's how much money you pay when those 4 sandwiches are delivered. So that's including the delivery fee. And 8 sandwiches cost $61. Again, that's including the delivery fee. Well, if you want to figure out what's the cost for 1 sandwich, you have to, you go to the 4 sandwiches, which cost $33. Now, if I added 1 more sandwich to that, that's going to be the cost of that 1 sandwich without the delivery fee. I'll be able to see what the cost is of 1 sandwich. Well, if I add 4 sandwiches to that, the cost went up to $61. So that difference from 33 to 61 is $28. That means the cost of each of those sandwiches was $7. It's $28 for the 4 sandwiches. That means the cost is $7 per sandwich. Because out here, you're not using the delivery fee. You're not in the calculation. You're just figuring out what's the increase in the cost, and that increase is due to just the cost of the sandwiches. The delivery fee is always constant. It doesn't go up. So the cost is $28 for 4 sandwiches. That means it costs $7 per sandwich. Well, 4 sandwiches times $7 per sandwich is $28. So how do you get to a cost of $33? That's the delivery fee. So how much got added on to this $28 to get to the $33? That was this $5 right here. So then go to 8 sandwiches and see if that makes sense. Each sandwich costs $7. 8 times 7 is $56. Then add the delivery fee of $5. Do you get a total cost of $61? And in fact, you do. So that works. So the delivery fee is $5, and the cost per sandwich is $7. That means you can now write an equation. So x is going to be the number of sandwiches. Y is going to be the total cost. So you can say that y is equal to $7 per sandwich times the number of sandwiches. This is the proportional part of this equation. This goes back to a long time ago. And so before you add the $5 delivery fee, the cost is proportional to the number of sandwiches. This is the way that whoever charges you for the cost of the sandwiches, they're going to look at how many sandwiches you purchase. Let's say you purchase 10 sandwiches. They're going to multiply that times 7. So they're going to tell you it's $70. Oh, but the delivery fee is $5. So that's going to cost you a total of $75. So y is equal to 7x, $7 per sandwich, times the number of sandwiches plus this $5 delivery fee. So this is the equation for this relationship up here, which is not proportional, by the way. Just this beginning part is proportional, but then you have to add that $5.